When kaiju movies come to mind, you're most likely thinking of Japanese giant monsters towering over major cities around the world. Japan has definitely taken the crowning achievement of marketing these titans in their country, especially thanks in part to the most iconic kaiju of them all, Godzilla. Many imitators emerged in the wake of Godzilla throughout the decades, including giants being made outside Japan. And the one we're going to look at in this video comes from Thailand, titled Paksa Wayu, or Garuda as I'll be calling it for this video. The film released to cinemas in 2004 in Thailand, and was produced, written, and directed by Monthan Ariyankun. Please forgive me if I mispronounced that. Ariyankun was a big monster movie fanatic at the time, especially with the king of all kaiju, Godzilla. One day he realized that Thailand didn't have a giant monster they can call their own, so Ariyankun set out to make exactly that. The studio RS Film agreed to greenlight the project, and Ariyankun began thinking up designs, looking at the divine animal the Garuda for inspiration. The Garuda is a mythical creature in Hindu mythology that is said to be half man and half bird. Ariyankun wanted the beast to be ferocious, cunning, and wanting it to have the ability to fly. He also wanted it not to be a simple-minded ravage animal, but instead wanted it to have intelligence to deceive its opponents. Sounds interesting, right? But how's the movie? Well, just the DVD case alone is sending me some good signals. The artwork looks pretty cool, and the little nominations down here give me some hope that this is going to be a great film. Even the back says right out that the movie was inspired by Godzilla. With all that in mind, I'm expecting one hell of a feature. Instead, what I got was a sci-fi TV movie of the week. And to put it bluntly, the movie is mediocre at best. And I'm being very, very generous when I say that. The paper fins, you might say. It's Thailand's first kaiju-inspired movie, made by a fan of the genre. Surely it couldn't be that bad, right? Well, let's quickly go over the plot summary so I can explain myself. The movie is about a young woman named Lena Pierre, who is half French and half Thai. She, along with her bilingual friend Tim, are archaeologists who wish to dive into doing more research on the mysterious creature, the Garuda, discovered by Lena's late father. A special task force brings in both Lena and Tim to help them research about the creature, whom they accidentally awaken in an underground construction site, causing the monster to go on a killing spree, and the characters now have to escape with their lives and try to stop the beast. In a lot of ways, this movie is similar to that of the 1999 Yongari film. Both movies were obviously made as homages to Godzilla. Both movies at the time were the most expensive films to make in their respective countries, and both pictures tried to aim themselves at the Western market by throwing in American actors as leads. Well, in this case, pseudo-American actors, with the hopes of having these films hit US cinemas, or at least gain an audience in the West, similar to that of Godzilla. And obviously both failed in that regard. But even more so in Garuda's case. While Yongari is not a great film by any means, it's at least garnered a following throughout the years, and some people, including myself, have come to accept it in that so bad but funny type of category.
I'm sorry, sir. I request to be removed from this operation. What?
Garuda doesn't really have that same appeal. While it definitely has some unintentional funny moments, the film as a whole really has no identity for itself, other than to be a by-the-books monster movie. There is this social commentary that's being projected throughout the movie at times, with Lena being ridiculed and mocked by the Thai people just because she's only half Thai. I can't really comment on that, only because I don't know much about Thailand's culture to know if half-breeds are seen like this. But in this case, it's taken to some exaggerated levels to accentuate this message. Oh, you're only half Thai? Well, you don't know anything about anything. Or, get out of our country, Mr. Frenchman, as we continue to throw our soft drinks at you. Okay, so you might be asking at least, what does the whole relegating non-Thai people mean for the movie? Well, nothing. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't even have any connection to the monster either. It just feels like a thing that makes the movie sound smarter than it really has any right to be. However, it does have potential to build an interesting character arc for Lena to overcome, as we do see that she is very lenient towards the subject matter. The problem with that is that the story just doesn't bother to develop Lena at all. In fact, she comes off rather annoying at times.
You're all gonna be very sorry. We live in a free country, moron.
Shut up, Lena.
Truth be told though, no character in this film has any development whatsoever. And what very little characterization there is, ultimately goes nowhere upon its introduction. In fact, would you believe it if I said the actors in this are actually worse than that in Yongari?
No! It isn't
particularly with the actor Dan Fraser who plays Tim. This guy cannot act to save his life. He overacts at every little thing, and if you plan on watching this film, try to count how many times he gapes his mouth open in shock with that dumb expression. If you're counting with your fingers, I guarantee you'll run out of them before the movie's over. According to IMDb, this is the actor's one and only film role, and it's really not hard to see why. The Thai actors are okay, I guess. The one standout character among them is this guy with the scars named Cry. While he's not much better than the rest of the cast, he at least has that memorable bad dude persona that he never breaks out of. Always playing with an overly large combat knife, and always trying to feel dominant in every scene he's in. He even gets to battle the Garuda one-on-one in a narrow hallway, even making a Matrix reference. And believe me when I say, that's not the only thing this film will be referencing. Also, this moment is debatably the best scene in the film. It's very over the top, but pretty fun to watch. In fact, many of the action scenes are pretty funny to view, just because of how excessively serious the movie takes itself with these moments. Like Tim taking on a bunch of armed soldiers with a light stand, and succeeding at that. As far as the title monster, the Garuda, goes, I'm very mixed on it. For a positive, I think it's a very cool looking creature. The design is very unique compared to the vast amount of reptilian and insect looking kaiju that have overrun the genre. And I do like how the beast uses stealth to its advantage, even if these moments mainly feel like happy accidents. But that's really all the praise I can give it, because overall it's pretty much just a mindless monster that kills people. I did a bit of research on the actual Garuda mythos, and found that the creature has some pretty interesting abilities, like it can use magic, and it can transform itself into a human. That alone would have been a lot of fun to play around with. However, the movie's version just gives us the basics of a wild monster. The creature doesn't have any unique abilities whatsoever. It just slashes at its victims, drags them away, or causes a happy accident for itself. It is the most bare bones approach you can do with a movie monster. The human transformation could have been implemented in a way that clearly shows us on what the monster is even trying to do, because we later find out that it wants the talon that Lena wears around her neck. Whenever this thing scrapes on something, it makes this noise that sounds like the Garuda's roar. The monster seems to be attracted to it, but it's very unclear as to why it even wants it. I mean, is it really just going to wear it around its neck in memory of its species? There's a bit of narration in the beginning of the film that shows that the creature was actively killing its own kind. So why does it care so much now? The necklace even fails at the MacGuffin role, as the creature sometimes doesn't seem to care about it, and just wants to kill and destroy. Like when it enters Bangkok, it completely ignores Lena, who is right in front of it, and flies off to do carnage in the city. Speaking of that, the moments where a monster is terrorizing an environment are often highlights in these types of movies, giving us some fun, destructive money shots. However, in Garuda, it is done so underwhelming. The Garuda is terrorizing the city for a total of 3 minutes, and all it does is fly around, shatter some windows, fly around, lifts up a car, fly around, and grabs a guy. Hell, even the film itself wants to get a move on, as the scene just abruptly cuts away to the Garuda standing on a building. The Garuda, if you couldn't tell by this point, is a CGI creature. Like young Gary, practical effects were considered to bring the beast to life, but ultimately were replaced in favor of CG. Though I think there might be 1 or 2 shots that still use them. The CG hasn't aged all that well, but even for its time, this is really nothing to write home about. I guess I should also mention that there is another monster that's briefly shown in the movie, the Naga, which were serpent creatures that were said to have fought the Garuda in Hindu mythology. It has nothing to do in the overall movie and only exists to give what little world building this movie actually attempts to make. Overall, I could go on to just how many dumb decisions were made with this. There's no setup to anything half the time. There's an out-of-nowhere romance. Guns don't affect the Garuda, but then all of a sudden they do. And the film doesn't even have an ending. Yeah, there's a sequel hook at the end, but we're obviously not getting that anytime soon. A major problem the film suffers from is that it just has way too many ideas implemented in the picture and doesn't go anywhere with them. The movie just feels like it wants to get to the monster action, which isn't even all that great great to begin with here. In fact, I'm not even sure if this movie was played off as a parody of the monster genre. The movie does take itself serious at times, but then you got characters like Cry, Tim, and the subway guy that make me think otherwise.
I'm horny.
Overall, Garuda may have been an ambitious film for its time and era, but there's a reason why nobody seems to remember it, or even care for it for that matter. Yes, it may be the first monster movie to be made in Thailand, but like the first video on YouTube, it garners some attention just for being that, but ultimately, you're not missing anything if you choose not to view it. I'm happy to know that Thailand hasn't completely lost interest in doing kaiju-inspired movies. In fact, as I'm writing this, there's a new film called The Lake, which looks very interesting, and definitely shows the long run we've come from that was Garuda, a movie that is better left forgotten. Thank you for watching towards the end, and I'll see you next time.
A best street block is no ordinary block. It's the block that's super.